Moving on, you may see that there is someone sitting right next to me that you have not met yet. Lando Voyles, you are the Pinal County Attorney.
That's correct.
I am really excited to have you here. I know you're here to talk
you.
about human trafficking. We even have a public service announcement that we can show our viewers as well.
Great. I would really appreciate it. And first of all, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to get this message out there. You know, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children just this last year announced that within the past 4 years, there's been an increase in 1,500% of children being sexually trafficked throughout our nation, not worldwide, our nation.
1,500%.
1,500%. And with numbers like that, it makes it realistic. I mean, it brings it home as to why it is that we're making such a push to stop it. Because these children are being exploited.
A 1,500% from last year or from?
Over the past 4 years.
Okay.
So 4 years ago, it was 1,500% less in sexual trafficking of minors than there is today.
Wow. So what is contributing to all of this?
I would have to say, and this is just a guess, I'd have to say the number one reason is the internet. The internet makes it so accessible, makes it so easy to traffic these young kids on, and so people feel safe because they don't see themselves in the situation physically, but they just sit there and purchase them online and then fly out to do whatever it is they're going to do with them and then fly. A lot of these kids don't even know, the children don't even realize they're being exploited.
You can purchase children online.
For an hour, for 30 minutes, for a day, yes, you absolutely can, and it's sickening.
Awful. And you're saying that the trafficking is happening even here in Arizona.
In fact, yes, we've continue to rescue young victims from this trafficking cartel, these trafficking cartels on a regular basis.
Right. One of our viewers, Billy Z. Cruzen, asking exactly who is trafficking humans in Pinal County.
So what's crazy is that they actually solicit children from all over, and they solicit to any child who is on the internet or any child who's on Facebook. So you'll get a child who's on Facebook, and as they get on Facebook, they'll say, having a bad day, hate my parents, la-di-da-wa-la. And you get someone who responds to that because you have trolls who are watching that.
How do the trolls even find that?
It's amazing
Oh my
how they do it.
gosh.
But they watch it, and as they watch it and they keep track of it, they literally reach out and start soliciting those children. You know, I used to prosecute gangs in Maricopa County, and when I prosecuted gangs in Maricopa County, I used to prosecute these individuals as gangs, and then next to me, on the side of me, would be the sex crimes prosecutor who would be prosecuting the sex crimes aspect. And I would take them down on the gang aspect. She would take them down on the sex crimes aspect. A lot of these people would actually go and recruit young girls at a mall. And
How?
I could list one mall after another, but here in Maricopa
Tell
County.
me now, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you.
What malls?
One
What
of the
malls
cases,
should we watch
One
out
of the
for?
cases that I worked with, that I had a case with most recently, and I say most recently, it's been a couple years, was Chandler Mall. Another one is Arrowhead. You look at the Arizona Mills Mall. You have all these different malls, and there is no mall that's safe. If you leave your daughter there, you have to expect that someone's going to go out and try to recruit them and make them believe that they are a boyfriend or want to be a boyfriend to this person, when in fact the guy is actually 26, 28 years old, and the girl is 14, 15 years old. The average age here in Arizona is 14 years old for trafficking minors. You have 20% of those who are boys, you have 80% who are young girls. They go out, they pretend like they're going to be boyfriend, girlfriend to these individuals there at the mall, and they bring those kids in, make them believe that they don't have to go back home because they got everything provided for them. They'll give them clothes, they'll literally smother them with gifts, they'll make them feel safe, and then within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, they start telling them, look, we need to earn money here. I need you to do one of two things, and they'll give them an option. You can either go out and help us rob someone by bringing them in, making them think they're going to have sex with you in the hotel, or two, we will you just go ahead and have sex with them, and we'll just take the money from them after they do it. So
People don't just run away?
They don't. The little girls and little boys believe that this is the environment they've got themselves into. They believe there's this love relationship, and these criminals control their minds. And this is happening. I mean, I could go on and on with this story because these kind of things go on and on.
Like the movie Taken. I just keep imagining the movie Taken, but that's, that's in Europe.
I know I've seen Taken. I can't remember what it was all about.
Liam Neeson, the daughter, she's traveling, she gets taken. Same sort of, it's trafficking.
Okay, but here's the
Don't want to give away the ending, guys.
Here's the difference. In Taken, they actually take the child away from the home and literally kidnap the child. A lot of these children aren't being kidnapped.
They're being
enticed. Lured in, they're being enticed, and they'll come back home. They'll stay at home sometimes, and then they'll just be sold out for an evening or sold out for a night.
Like a side job that their parents don't even know about.
That's exactly right. They have no clue. Yeah. And sometimes they'll actually start to get into that relationship so thick that they'll just stay with that person that convinces them that this is their loved one or what have you.
Right. And by the way, viewers that are watching right now, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask the county attorney, feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm periodically looking at it, so I can ask some viewer questions as well.
One of the reasons, and we talk a lot about illegal immigration and what a big problem illegal immigration is causing, and I know that's getting a lot of publicity right now, and sometimes for the wrong reason, sometimes for the right reason. I think it's important to bring it home as to what the right reason is. One of the right reasons to stop illegal immigration, or to solve the problem, whatever it is, to solve the problem, one of the biggest reasons is because these criminals will often elicit these young girls that are foreigners. And the reason they elicit them is because they know they're the least likely to report. Because if they report, they're going to get deported.
So they're saying that the victims themselves are actually illegal immigrants. And
sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. Yes. In fact, the grant that we just got from the federal government, we actually just got it renewed. One of the only agency in the state of Arizona who got it renewed, thankfully, or who actually got it first and then got it renewed. We've actually focused on rescuing foreign victims with that grant. The office, of course, looks for all victims, not just foreign victims, but the grant is specifically for foreign victims, to rescue and restore these foreign victims. And in the meantime, we happen to get domestic ones as well.
Do we have any numbers in terms of how many people are being trafficked, I guess, within the state of Arizona or Pinal County, to get specific to your county?
As far as giving numbers, I don't have statistics as to how many it is. I know Phoenix was ranked number 1 for the entire U.S.
What?
Yes, Phoenix was ranked number 1 for the entire U.S. This is just recently. But as far as...
And is that why is it Phoenix? What is the attraction of Phoenix? And I mean, it might get controversial. Is it because there is a lot of illegal immigrant...
I have to say, this is a guess, but I have to say that a lot of it has to do with, and I say it's a guess from the cases I've prosecuted now, that there's a lot of truth to the fact that if you take someone who isn't going to report, as a criminal, that victim is more enticing to use than someone who they're fearful will report. Because now they can commit their crimes forever, as long as that victim doesn't report and as long as they don't get caught doing it, right?
Right.
So we do have a major problem with it, and my guess from the cases I prosecuted would be that. I don't have statistics per se to back that up. But as far as the race, this spans over every single race. There isn't a race that you could say they're exempt from, or that they're solely this race. You mean the victims? The victims and the defendants. Both the traffickers, the criminals, as well as the victims. There is no... Age doesn't matter to them, and as far as who they're selling, usually younger individuals, but age doesn't matter, but definitely not your... what do you want to call it? Where you fit in society, or how much money you make, or how much your parents make. That means nothing to them. It doesn't matter who you are. If you fit within the categories that they look for, which is the vulnerable youth, those are the ones they're going to seek out.
Awesome. Gio Leo saying Phoenix is number 1 in trafficking. I'm embarrassed of my state for the first time ever.
Well, I don't want to make it to sound like something to be embarrassed about. I got to tell you that my opinion is, and this is my opinion, is that the reason Phoenix is that Maricopa County is number 1 is because, and Phoenix was what was ranked, but because that county attorney, Bill Montgomery, is doing an amazing job of recognizing this. And there are so many states nationwide who don't recognize it. And so because they recognize it, those are the ones that get reported.
Right.
So to say that, you should feel bad about it, you should actually be proud I would say be proud of Arizona for the way we're recognizing these crimes, because we're in the forefront on recognizing. We started recognizing these back before this statistic was starting to be recorded by the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children.
Right. Recognizing it as in terms of seeking it out, trying to really crack down on it, as opposed to other counties, states that may not look into it as much. They're focused on other crimes, other things.
You know, if you don't know a crime exists, you can't look for the criminal, right? If you have no idea that people are stealing money on Wall Street, that's the hot topic. There's no way you can go out and find who's stealing it, right?
Right.
If you have no idea who is coming in illegally, or if there is anybody coming in illegally, there's no way to go out and stop it. So you have to know that it exists, and the way you know it exists is the way that you prosecute. And one of the things that Bill Montgomery does, and that I do, and we just recently built in Pinal County, is a Family Advocacy Center. And this human trafficking grant is run out of that Family Advocacy Center. A Family Advocacy Center is essentially a one-stop shop for children. These are children who are trafficked. These are children who are sexually abused, right? So they're sexually abused, and when they report to someone they trust. They report to a parent, they report to a loved one, they report to someone who they know that a non-offending parent, right? They report to someone who they feel like they can trust. Because there's a mandatory report here in Arizona, that teacher has to report that now to DCS. Department of Child Services will then have a mandatory report also. They have to report it to the police. So once the police get it, that Department of Child Services, formerly known as CPS, that DCS agent has already gone and spoken to that child and done a second interview, at least a second, right? Then the police interview that child. If they don't have a Family Advocacy Center, they interview that child in the same facility as a defendant. Mm-hmm. It's the hard table, hard chair, shackles on the floor, spotlight cameras, right? Re-victimize a little child. We're talking a 9-year-old in some instances.
Sad.
After they victimize there, then they turn around and they, being victimized, re-victimized, but through the interviews, then they're sent to a medical center, medical facility. Here we use Phoenix Children's Hospital. In Pinal County we do. It took us approximately 4 weeks for a boy who was sodomized in Casa Grande to get him medically examined in Phoenix. And it wasn't because they didn't want to help. It was because there's no time. There's no way to do that, right? Because they just had so much backup. After that interview, they go to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist interviews them, and they do long-term effects, see if there's any long-term effects. Then they come in, they interview with us, and we prepare them for trial. On average, every child who's sexually abused has approximately 12 interviews. They have about 6 months, and it takes several different agencies to talk to that child before we can get a case together to prosecute that case. This Family Advocacy Center, and I apologize for taking so long on this topic, but this Family Advocacy Center is a one-stop shop. We built
everything
for all of them. So I brought in all the different agencies right there to the one center in Santan Valley. I have another one in Eloy. The Eloy one is fully accredited nationally, showing that when we just got it accredited, showing that we are providing the absolute best services in that community. We're doing the exact same thing in Santan Valley. We brought all the different groups together. We've teamed up with Phoenix Children's Hospital, so we have a little medical center in the back. We have a medical exam room. We have a little interview room that's a soft room. We bring in the child on the first day that they have what we call their initial outcry. They bring them down to the facility. They interview them in the one room where we have a forensic interviewer talk to the child. After talking to the child, that they go out, they go back to the back, they talk to all the different disciplines back in the back room. And if anybody else has any other questions, they have them all written down for them. They hand them the questions, the forensic interviewer walks back in, finishes the interview. That's one interview. The child's taken back to the back of that facility. They're medically examined right then, because we have 24/7 medical staff prepared to see that if necessary. We have a 72-hour kit. We have a little toy, a blanket, all this stuff we give to the child, right? Then we've teamed up with outpatient resources, such as the different shelters, women's shelters,
sure,
so that we can actually take the non-offending parent and the child and immediately place them that same day. So now in Pinal County, within 24 hours, every single child, instead of 1 in 13, which was getting reported to us, we now have 100% of all the children reporting to us because we're there. As part of the police, teamed up with the police. We get 100% of the children as they report to us. So that means that we get to see all the different sexual crimes being alleged, and we can start investigating them immediately. And we have the entire case packaged up, ready to go in one day, 24 hours. And that child is removed from that house in that same time frame, in that same 24 hours, so that child's safe. Now there's one interview, one medical exam. If there's any long-term effect or psychiatrist, a psychiatrist that needs to talk to the child and do therapy, they can do that, but we wouldn't count that as interviews. They can start to rehabilitate that child, and we have that case prepared to go to trial on that first day. So this is the way that we do investigate crimes now, so that we can catch more of them. So it's the way we investigate where it makes it look like we're getting more crimes.
Do you guys go undercover to try to
Of course.
catch?
Yeah, of course. We have all that set up, anything that we need to actually, if it's necessary. It's not always necessary. A lot of times we have DNA. So if we need it, sometimes we do it even if we have DNA, but we will. I mean, we use that stuff to try to get it. We also try to work with, we have all different kinds of resources to work to try to investigate these cases. But the cool thing is that we now have what appears to be a spike in crime, but in reality we recognize more. Because before I took office, it was only 1 in 13 children would report to us because they didn't want to wait 4 weeks to get checked out for the sodomy. They removed themselves from the home and they were done. And they said, we're done here, and you couldn't do anything else about it. We didn't have any evidence to prosecute a case.
Right.
So now that we have that evidence, we can now prosecute that case. So now we get 100% instead of just 1 in 13, we get 100%. So it looks like there's a spike. But the good thing is that since I took office, we've had a decrease in crime every single year. So overall, you can see a major change in the way we prosecute. You just have to get the right people off the street.
Right. In terms of prosecution, you target both the traffickers as well as the people buying the children to have
Absolutely.
the sex?
Absolutely.
All sides of it.
Absolutely. In fact, if you only go after one side, the other people will find another resource somewhere else. They'll go to another city. A lot of these people will fly in from out of state to have sex with a child in a hotel here and then fly out the next day. That's how crazy this is.
Do hotel workers, are they aware of this problem? I know you guys are working to...
That's a great question, because in our grant, we have 5 different resources coalitions that we've created, right? So we have a medical group that we're training, that we're working with. That's a coalition that we've worked with, so that if any signs come in, they know how to spot it, right? Mm-hmm. So we've teamed up with doctors, we've teamed up with nurses, and a group of medical staff. We've also got a law enforcement staff, so we're literally training all the law enforcement on how to recognize these offenses, and if they see a little child or girl that reports certain things, they can immediately start thinking, well, maybe this is what is happening. We also have a faith-based group, because sometimes little kids don't report to medical staff. They don't report to law enforcement. Sometimes they talk to their friends in their Sunday school or in their little church groups or what have you, right? And that relationship they may have with one of their ministers or something like that may actually be the bond that we need to reach out to connect to them. So we've actually got a faith-based group as a coalition. We also have human services group that has 2 parts. One of them is a social services group, and we also have an emergency response group. So we actually train in social services, we train truckers. We train, and we have groups from all over the...
Truckers, because a lot of times the people trafficked are being transported by trucks, is that why?
They're not necessarily being transported by trucks, but you'll have someone literally come into a trucker parking lot,
to do the exchange.
Drop a kid off.
Oh my gosh.
And they buy the kid right there for an hour, 2 hours. So we literally will have... So we have all these different coalitions, right? We're building these coalitions. In fact, if people, and this is great time to do a plug if that's okay. Anybody who's willing to work with one of these coalitions, we'd love to hear from you, especially if you live in Pinal County, because we'd like to get more help from the community who would actually be willing to work on these coalitions, volunteer their time, so that if they do see these signs from young children, that they can help report it and we can start investigating these cases. So.
All right, I'm going to check in with the chat room. I know a lot of people asking questions. I haven't checked in too much, although one of the questions was from Rachel in terms of how she could help the victim. So it looks like you just answered that one.
That's great, yeah.
Rachel also asking, is it safe to say that sex trafficking is affecting the same vulnerable youth that drugs do, meaning anyone and everyone can be affected and victimized?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. That answered the same question. These are the children who they seek out, the ones that are the most vulnerable, the ones that are actually they specifically state that, look, this is what I hate about my house, this is what I hate about my parents, this is what whatever, right? Because then that immediately shows a trafficker, oh, this child's vulnerable. I mean, and they don't just use Facebook. They'll use the Moco space. They'll use Twitter. They'll
it's probably easier to search on Twitter.
All over.
You know?
Yep.
Mari Bell saying, I was watching a documentary about women and young girls who come here illegally. If they don't have enough money to pay their smugglers, they are prostituted out for years. It's so sad.
That's very true. In fact, they call them rape trees. In fact, from here to the border, sometimes you'll see these traffickers who will literally hang a bra up on a tree, showing that they took advantage of a child, that they raped a child out in the desert. And
like a sign of pride?
Yep, that's exactly
Awful.
what it is. It really is. It's sickening. And furthermore, just like was just mentioned, that's absolutely true. We see this on a regular basis with the illegal immigration issue, is that as you get these kids that are being trafficked, or these young women, or even older women for that matter, if they are coming through illegally, that is often their payment, is that they have to have sex with their coyote, or they have to have sex with the trafficker who brings them in. The others, the men, often have to pay up to $10,000 just to get out.
So sad. Billy C. Cruising, Sheriff Joe addressed the human trafficking issue a few years ago, yet people dismissed it as an attack on illegals. Gio Leo saying, Bill Montgomery is a really great guy. You as well, Lando. Thank you for bringing this problem to our attention.
Well, thank you to Gio Leo. Gio Leo? Is that
Gio Leo, yeah.
There you go.
Mary Bell saying, you just never know if these disgusting acts could be going on in your own neighborhood. Awful. Billy Z. Cruisin saying, are the member of these gangs, or cartels, I guess, held in jail without bond, or how are they treated typically?
Now, the only way they can be held without bond, because everyone is entitled to a reasonable bond in Arizona, except for certain crimes. And happens to be that sex crimes is one of them that they can be. So if they are the trafficker, or if they are having sex with a minor, then yes, there is a potential they can be held without a bond. But again, that is the judge who gets the ultimate discretion to interpret the law as to what it is, who it is that doesn't get that bond. We can always ask for it, but we don't always get it. If you have someone who is illegal and they're the trafficker, which happens on occasion, I mean, like we just mentioned, then you'll get that ice hold, what we call ice hold, hoping that will hold. But right now, the federal government is releasing so many ICE detainees that's a whole other issue we could talk about another day.
Let's keep scrolling. Oh yeah, you already asked what can I do to help. Let's see. It's about children. People should be polarized. I don't know what that means. What can I do in Maricopa County? Rachel wants to know.
You know, in Maricopa County, they're doing something similar. There's other coalitions that are doing it now, but Bill Montgomery has a great staff, and I can't say enough good about him because he's a great prosecutor. He's prosecuted with me shoulder to shoulder in so many cases, and he's a smart attorney. So he's doing similar investigations that we do in Pinal County. And as far as what people can do to help them out, volunteer, ask them, call them up and ask how you can volunteer, because we take volunteers regularly in Pinal County.
What would you say, I mean, it's hard to generalize, but I guess what would you say are the signs of recognizing that an individual is being trafficked?
Well, one of the biggest signs that will alert a family is often a young girl who is a quote runaway, right, or a habitual runaway. That's one of the key signs to look for. They don't always have to be a runaway. Sometimes they can be just hanging out at a friend's house. And if you don't know what's happening at the friend's house, or you don't know where they're going with the friend's house, then you should probably find out. You should probably look into it.
But a lot of teenage girls do go to hang out at. I'm like,
Trust
I
me.
was once that
Trust
teenage
me.
girl, and I was not trafficked.
Well, that's good. That's really good. Well, there's no way, there's no guarantee there is no guarantee
Right.
that any child is safe.
Right.
Like I said, this spans over every single national origin, every single race, every single gender, it spans over all of it. So there is no way to say, yes, that is it, or no, that's not it. The best way to do it is to start talking to these kids. Talk with your child on a daily basis. That's one of the best remedies. If you have children, sit down with them on a daily basis. Ask, who did you talk to the most today? How long did you spend with that person? You know, what was your favorite thing that you talked about with them? And just go through the topics. And don't feel like you're being nosy, because as a parent, you're allowed to be nosy.
Well, any final thoughts? As soon as we wrap up, I'm actually going to play the human trafficking PSA
Excellent.
that you guys
I
put
appreciate
together.
that.
So anything else you want to tell our viewers?
You know, I just want to, again, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and share this, because this is the way we get the message out. This is one of the ways that we actually let the children know that there is a better way than where they're at right now.
Right.
One of the biggest difficulties we have, even after we rescue a child from this crime, is to explain to them that this is better, that there's a better life than that.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy as it may seem, they've already been sucked into it so bad that they believe that this is a better life than anything they can earn on their own. And so this idea of teaching them that there's a better life out here, helping them see that there's a better life out here, and then being there for them every step of the way is the only way to combat this. And then, of course, taking the worst of the worst off the street. Take these violent thugs off the street.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything that you guys are doing
Appreciate
to
it.
fight human trafficking. I am going to go ahead and walk you out, and while I do that, I'm going to play this PSA
Excellent.
for you guys so you learn a little bit more about the cause.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
you.
this.
Age 13, I was taken advantage of by people who I thought loved me. Almost every day, I was forced to have sex with strangers for money. If only people knew about human trafficking, many of us could have been saved sooner.
We are fortunate Shauna is free and able to tell her story. Others are not so lucky.
If you know of someone who may be a victim of human trafficking, please call the National Human Trafficking Resource Center.